Hello, Internet. It's me, Hugh, with another Geek Diary, but it's not actually a Geek Diary. It's a Geek and Dragon episode. And so I will say hello, and
Hello.
we got Qdragon here as well, and we have seen a movie.
If you go back 500 years, not much happened in a century. Now a lot happens in 6 months. Technology feeds on itself and it gets faster and faster. It's going to continue, and in about 40 years it's going to be moving so fast, the pace of change is going to be so astonishingly quick that you won't be able to follow it unless you enhance your own intelligence by merging with the intelligent technology we're creating.
This guy is freaky.
We just want to talk about the films that we've watched, that we enjoy, and that have sort of spoken to us, and this is one of them.
Yeah, and also, a lot of the documentaries, especially, but I'm sure other movies in the future, if we do them, are sort of just springboards onto other topics, right?
Yes, and this is an interesting one because we reviewed this this film called Transcendent Man. Ray Kurzweil, is that the way of saying? Is that how you say it?
Kurzweil.
Kurzweil, Ray Kurzweil, who is this scientist, computer scientist, basically, who came to fame by creating electronic music, like synthesizers originally, right?
And also creating technology that translates printed words into audio for the blind.
Which is amazing. I mean, like, it's just that whole section of the film, just what the impact, the obvious impact that it's had on people's lives is just amazing.
Also,
But he doesn't just stop there.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the blind and the lazy, because I heard of Kurzweil when I was just getting into high school, because for years I had the software Kurzweil 2000 on my computer.
Because he couldn't be bothered to read.
Yes.
I think that should be the name of the episode. Should be for the blind and lazy.
Yes.
So this guy, the film is, and we were sort of not bemoaning this fact, but we were saying that it's more of a film about him than it is about his specific ideas. Although this singularity that's coming is his focus for that. And why don't you explain to us what that?
Yeah. Well, basically, I'm sure. I guess he may have been the first to sort of propose this. But certain trends in technology, like Moore's Law and other exponential trends in technology, will eventually lead to what they call the singularity, which is sort of an analogy from physics, where basically the acceleration is happening so fast that things, the way we predict things, sort of breaks down.
It becomes and his point to it is basically that, and this is the term that you've sort of you're slowly bringing me around to, this transhuman or post-human approach to man. That it's not a technology that's separate from us. It's not that AIs are gonna take over the world and the universe. It's that we will meld with these artificial intelligences and potentially go forth into the universe, and it will become a giant thinking cloud of which we are in control.
Yeah, but basically the idea is,
Thank you, Sebastian.
the development and, I mean, there already are AIs, but the development of sophisticated, separate AIs will happen essentially before the singularity, and then after the singularity, the only way for people to sort of keep up with the pace of advancement will be to merge with technology more fully.
And that really spoke to me. That was something that when I heard him say that, I understand. You must have the same thing, where there's just not enough hours in the day to consume all of the stuff, all this amazing information, especially now that we have the entire, collective knowledge of the human race, in a network. There's no time to read the entire internet. And we have, in a way, it's funny. He's predicting this, and we're saying, oh, it sounds, not so much us, but people in general are saying, oh, it's so crazy and out there. But we have, the planet has become conscious in a way in that we can now, the fact that we're having a conversation as if we were in the same room across the entire country.
Yeah.
Talking about a film that we streamed off the internet. We are tapped into this network, you probably more than anybody.
Exactly, and with recording software that never fails.
Yes, that's right. We're Q is laughing at me because the last time we recorded this, it crashed and failed to capture all of our intelligent gold. This is
So
a mere shadow, pale
yes,
comparison to what we had before.
the singularity is when software doesn't crash.
Yeah, it's always going to crash, isn't it? There's always going to be some issues. But again, maybe, and again, I think part of the crashing of software is probably to do with the people controlling it. So, people's fear of technology is more about, I think, a fear of themselves. I mean, the film goes. The film basically, I felt that the film started very sort of even keeled, very sort of almost technical in nature as it talked about the things that he'd done and the things that he
Yeah.
believes and where he sees things going. He is a company obviously that does a bunch of consulting about where technology is going to be going in the future, but it also touched on the idea that he lost his father not at a very young age, but well, I guess by our standards, a very young age. He seems obsessed with bringing him back, and I think that gives him a bit of to some a quack like a little crazy quality to it, and that he wants to live forever. He believes that he will
Yeah.
live forever.
And I think again, his his timeline on certain predictions is likely off.
And what was it? It was
And
like 2040 something.
2040, I think, is supposed to be the singularity.
Right.
2045.
Singularity will become will at the singularity in 2040. It will become impossible for us to know where or distinguish between man and machine. Right? Is that
Essentially.
which
And
again those lines are blurring already. I mean, we have
yeah,
pacemakers.
definitely.
We're talking about the idea of deep brain. What did you call it?
Stimulation.
Deep brain stimulation for Parkinson's.
Yeah.
We're in there. We're messing around with this stuff already. My concern is that we're being held back by societal concerns and ethics, and not that I want to become Dr. Moreau or anything. I just feel that perhaps our laws and rules are holding back the progress in this area, unlike technologies, more sort of silicon-based technologies.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I watched this one video where it's like saying the science is compromised is the first thing you say right before you become the Green Goblin.
Exactly, exactly. I mean,
But yeah, no, I agree with you too. Definitely,
well,
mostly.
and I was sort of mea culpa. I was saying it's my fault to some extent, and my industry, like the film and television industry, fault to some extent, because I mean the classic science fictions. I mean, I've just made a science fiction film about an artificial intelligence killing people, and I you know I had set out to make a film about sort of 2001 from the computer's perspective, and it ends up being Final Destination in Space. But again, continuing this idea that that artificial intelligences are alien and strange and just want to turn on us and kill us. Going back to 2001, Blade Runner, all of these films are this almost paranoia about technology, which I personally don't subscribe to that. I believe that we are the problem, not technology. And I look forward to a day when we can meld with technology in a way and make us better than we are now.
Well, hopefully for me, that'll be sometime next year.
Exactly. Well, we were just having this great chat with a fellow called the Hacksmith out of Kitchener, Ontario, and he is. I call him Kitchener's Tony Stark because he's created this system, this exoskeleton that allows him to sort of bench press 175 pounds, and he's working on all sorts of fun projects, and we're hoping to team up for our upgrade required documentary.
Yeah, I can't remember which recording session I said this, but my goal is to basically be a less ambitious Ray Kurzweil.
Right. Although I think you underestimate your ambition. I have a feeling that if we progress with this stuff, you're going to want to do more and more. I mean, the hope is to get, and the reason why we watched Transcendent Man, the reason why we watched this documentary was because we want to make a documentary that touches on similar things. And I think,
Yeah.
I found it, again, I don't want to do a movie review, but I found that it told me enough about him and what he was working on that it definitely made me want to explore further. You were saying you wanted to listen to that audio book.
Yeah, no, I bought his audiobook. I mean, he has, I think, several books. But yeah, like the big one was The Singularity is Near.
Yeah, which is that's and I think this in a way this was like a big ad for that. Like, I felt like that was definitely the core to what was going on. I gotta say I liked the way they made the film.
From a technical documentary making standpoint, I thought it was quite good. Although I almost wish they hadn't have jumped around so much. Like, with the father thing, with certain other singular aspects, I wish they had sort of clumped them together a bit more.
Mm. I felt like they were. I felt at the end they were trying to say, "Hey, look, we're showing the other side too. We don't want to be just pro Ray type stuff." And his sort of prepare to evolve type thing. Look, he's got a great marketing bent on it too. I think you have to be. You need people who want to get this stuff out there. People who are willing to sound like a like on the loony fringe of this stuff. And my concern was that I felt that they're focusing on his desire to basically recreate his father in digital form, or not digital form, but somehow bring him back as an AI. I felt that detracted a bit from the message, and maybe made him seem a little less accessible to people. But his certainly his predictions apparently have been quite bang on. I think one of his predictions had to do with the cell phone. Was the idea that we were going to have technology that we were going to have technology that used to be fill rooms in the palm of our hands.
Yeah,
that's not a hard prediction. That's Moore's law.
A lot of that brute force computing power trends are quite clear, and certain other trends are quite clear. It's just what the implications of those is sort of where things get into speculation.
I can't wait for the nanobots. Like, bring on the nano. I want to be able to inject something that fixes things or that checks things out. I mean, I was reading recently about a little pill that you take instead of going in and having a
colonoscopy?
A colonoscopy or an endoscopy. I have to do the endoscopy. Is that right? Is that what it's called, endoscopy? When you go down the endoscope, whatever.
Yeah.
I have to do that every couple of years because I got this thing that they need to keep an eye on. And if I could just take a pill and it takes photos on the way down, how freaking great is that?
Also, the one specific thing I did mention was the hyperoxygenation, like nanoparticles.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I mean, like they said that the nanoparticles are so much better than natural blood cells that you could breathe in and hold your breath for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
For anyone with lung issues, a few microns of that stuff could be awesome.
So in other words, when instead of struggling to get full breaths, you would be able to make the most of the breaths you've got, type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff. And again, my concern there is I feel like, I don't know, maybe I am Dr. Moreau, but I feel like we're being held back by I'm not saying we should be reckless, but I also feel like we've got to be able to experiment. We've got to be able to do that. That's why I'm so interested in the biohacking side of stuff, is I feel like, there was a great video about that guy who embedded basically a key so that he could, through a network, open his doors and stuff without having to bring out his keys. And I thought that was fascinating. He sort of tagged himself. The dog has, our dog has a tag. Our dog has a little under subcutaneous hacking.
Certain people can get ID tags injected now.
I would totally do that.
Then people get paranoid about the government and stuff.
Well, and you just had this massive Sony hack too. I mean, that was interesting. Again, people blame technology for that when the reality is it was probably someone being fast and loose with their passwords.
Yeah.
But everyone assumes it's like some kind of technological cyber terrorism. It makes it like it's, or cyber vandalism, whatever we want to call it. Everyone's, I know the estates are very big on calling it cyber vandalism right now. So, but as I say, bringing it back to the film, I went looking. I couldn't figure out. How much of this was a marketing, like whether the film was done by people who. Was it like an organized? It almost felt a little bit like an industrial film, in that it felt like it was a film done by a company to some extent.
Yeah, I see that. I can see that.
I'm not saying that I didn't feel like I was being manipulated. In fact, I felt like they were going out of their way to try not to seem like that. But I just wasn't sure whether this was something. I was curious to know whether this was a film that people wanted to see, or whether this was a film that they felt needed to be put out, type thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and either way, I don't know if it would have turned out much differently.
I don't think there's such thing as a neutral documentary because you just, by nature of what you film or don't film, you are making judgment calls, basically. So
yeah.
But definitely, look, from my standpoint, I think we've said this. We're both going to be following up with this guy's stuff because of the film.
Yeah, and if you're into this at all, it's on Netflix. We would recommend it. Definitely.
Yeah, basically, we seem to be sort of doing the geeks picks of Netflix with our films right now. But it is, I definitely find myself working through all the different things that which is sort of areas of interest that I find, things that I get fascinated with. So definitely enjoyed that. And again, I think we may have said this, but it really stuck with me. The idea that his job is to find out about new technologies and see where they're going, and he feels like he's saying that in order to keep up, we are going to need to augment our brains with technology to allow us to do that. It is the only way we will be able to keep up.
Maybe we should try and get some funding from him.
What was funny was I definitely felt like I would love to talk to him or his organization in some way, because I feel that he is trying to do similar things.
There's an institute called Singularity University, and they basically have like a 10-week development course for technology in general.
Wow. Okay, so I should definitely look into that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Again, this guy's got his fingers in a lot of different things, and I think the film does a really good job of getting that across. And he was a wonder kid. I mean, he was on television back in the black and white days, showing off his computer generated music, and he seems to have retained that kind of childlike, geeky love for what he's doing. And I love the whole stuff. We haven't touched on this. He's also basically trying to hack his body. Like he's experimenting
with 200 supplements a day. Yeah, he's like trying to slow aging and correct his natural defects, because his father died of heart problems, and that's highly hereditary, right? So.
And he seemed to have done a pretty good job of it so far.
Yeah, I mean, he looks pretty good for his age.
He looks well, and there's that great scene where William Shatner is at a sort of some kind of a function with him, and they start talking, and Ray starts talking about these supplements that he takes, and of course, Shatner, his ears just perk right up, and he wants to know how it happens, and Ray, I thought in a very sort of self-effacing way, says, well, I own a company that sells these, so I want to look into that too. I find that fascinating. I mean, why not? If there's things we can do, why not?
And I think pharmaceutical companies get like a bad rap, especially supplement companies, and to a certain extent that's justified. But I almost really trust Kurzweil, because he does take them every day. Putting his money where his mouth is, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's so many. Who knows? I'd have to look into it more. I mean, there were biologists. There was a biologist there who was definitely questioning his knowledge, whether he had the right facts for that stuff. And again, the film was very good at sort of putting some opposing positions up there as well. But yeah, I find that stuff. There's the problem is. When you get too far in advance of this stuff, when you start doing the stuff that's truly different, that's pushing the bounds, there is a lot of crazy people. There's also a lot of sort of charlatans selling snake oil and stuff. So I'm always a bit nervous about it. But this guy seems motivated for the in the right way, and as you say, he's practicing what he preaches.
Yeah.
So yeah, thumbs up from the nerds. So look, why don't we wrap this up? Anything else you wanted to add before we move on?
No, that's pretty much it. On my channel, I ask people to give any other movie recommendations.
Ah, very good. Well, why not? Please do. Yes, especially on Netflix.
Yeah, and maybe even just general topics that they would like us to touch on.
Yeah, that's good, because we're gonna run out of films soon. We should definitely. No, I would definitely like to open this up to other topics. So if there are things that people want to talk about, or think we should be, or think we might enjoy exploring, then do let us know. And
another thing we could do is talk about just YouTube videos. I follow a lot of YouTubers and Twitter feeds that just post interesting technical science videos. So
I just watched a great one about basically a giant 3D printer that prints houses.
Wow, that's cool.
Which I think is just genius. So maybe we can touch on that sometime. So, all right, so let's wrap it up. Until we geek again, cheerio!
A dragon.